Let's go. Before we begin today, just want to say that this is a really hard time for a lot of families, both families that are struggling inside of foster care and families that are just families struggling as we enter into this Christmas season. And so if there's any way you can support a foster family near you, if there's any way you can support just any family near you, foster or not, please do that. That's a huge thing right now. A lot of families are having a rough time. So thank you. Thank you for listening to that. I wanted to go on and talk about what happened next. So we talked about the first 6 months with Robert were really hard, and really for a couple years. It took him a while before he really settled in. But things started to get better. And one of the first things as things started to get better is Robert and I took this vacation. We got on a train and we rode from our town up to Sacramento to see the train museum. And we stayed at a hotel up there. And this was like our first vacation. I was so nervous. I was so nervous how his behaviors would be on the train, how they'd be at the hotel, if he destroyed stuff, what would happen. And nothing. He was Mr. Perfect. That whole train ride, that whole trip. It was so great for him to have come that far, far enough that he could be trusted to go on that trip, on that vacation. And that was such a good time for both of us. One of the hard things, though, was that his teacher said he would never learn to read. He was hopeless, and he had gotten to a certain age where they didn't feel, if kids hadn't begun learning how to read, they didn't feel he would ever learn how to read. And his behavioralist, who we already talked about how he felt about the behavioralist, but the behavioralist said the same thing. I became resolved, in a sense, to we're going to push as hard as we can, but I'm not expecting Robert to ever do well in school, which I want to say we're looking, I know I'm jumping way ahead, but now Robert made the dean's list last year. He is pretty much on the level for a lot of stuff. We do like those standardized testing things here. He's like in the 80th percentile for reading.
So they told him that I never knew to read, so don't try anything about it. But my dad didn't really accept that. So after a while we moved to a new place. And then when I started my new school, they said, oh no, he could be able to read, but he has dyslexia, we need to work on that. So they gave me something called Lexia, and ever since then, when they started, I've been able to read really good. I made it on the honor roll. I'm going through chapter books. I'm reading through chapter books now. It takes me like a day now to finish a chapter book. It was good, and it's really nice to read. I guarantee you, he likes it somewhat, but now he used to be able to spell words out, and now he can't, because I just figured them out for it. So I guarantee you that's not something he likes to have happening now. Not now, but we used to read books together a lot, and he used to change words. So now he can't do that, because I'm always looking over his shoulder, making sure what he's doing. He used to always say, and you should respect your dad, and he said, eat your broccoli every single day, as broccoli's better than pickles. See, I love pickles, or kind of do. I like certain kind of pickles now. And my dad just hates pickles. He loves broccoli, but I hate broccoli. Like, I can't really eat broccoli, he can't really eat pickles. So we always argue about what's better sometimes. So that's what he used to do. Do I have to work harder than other kids? Certainly. With everything, and it's not only just because I have dyslexia. Just reading kind of tore me down so hard, where I just couldn't focus on other stuff either. So I just wanted to read. I had to learn. It is so good, I think. I have dyslexia, because it made me just pretty much work my butt off.
He's come a long way. So if anyone ever tells you can't do something, or that your kids won't be able to do something, please take that with a grain of salt. He got into a good education system here, and they actually invested in him in ways that people didn't in the education system when we were back in California. So that was huge. So Robert's dad and I grew closer. we would sit and talk while Robert would play at McDonald's, and Robert would come back and check in with his dad and talk to him a few minutes here and there, mostly to find out like family history and health things from the past. Robert was really interested in all of that. But then he'd go back off and play, and Robert's dad and I would sit there and talk for sometimes an hour, 2 hours at a time. So we became fairly close, and that was great. It was. He had some major health needs, and he was fighting to have Robert back in spite of those health needs. And the court prolonged, because he was doing everything he was supposed to as far as what the court had laid out for him. And they just stretched it out, which really wasn't fair to him. If they didn't believe that he could have Robert back, they should have just said that, not said, well, okay, but if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll get him back. Well, no, he did X, Y, and Z, and they weren't going to give him back because he spent like half of his life in the hospital at that point in time. So they weren't going to give him back, but they dragged him along for a long period of time. Eventually, Robert's dad saw the writing on the wall and said, you know what? If he isn't going to live with me, if he's going to be adopted, then it has to be with Nick, and I will sign off on that. And so he did. He signed off saying that he wanted me to adopt Robert, which was huge and such a blessing. And I'm so grateful for that, because it could have gotten really ugly if that didn't happen, or we would have had to wait another year, because about a year later he passed away, and then Robert probably would have been adopted. But I'm grateful that we didn't have to wait, and I'm grateful that it didn't get ugly in there like it could have, and that he made that decision. I'm sure that was a hard decision. I'm sure that was a very hard decision. But again, he had a terminal illness and he knew it. So even though he wanted to spend that last year with Robert living with him, he just saw the writing on the wall. And he stayed involved. I mean, honestly, it wasn't like all of a sudden Robert was adopted and we shut him out. He stayed involved in our life, which was huge and really helpful for Robert. So Robert was adopted. About a week before, they came and they had some paperwork for us to fill out. He was adopted, and the worst behaviors we saw from Robert happened about a week after he was adopted. And I'm told that that's pretty typical. The kids like all of a sudden realize, oh my gosh, this is real. Like this just happened. And things got ugly, right? Which made me really glad that we didn't go to Disneyland right after his adoption, because that was what we had planned, was to do a Disney vacation as a celebration of his adoption. But other families in my support group at the time had warned me that typically that's when the bad behaviors were. And because of that, I postponed. Like I decided to wait. I forget, I don't know how long we waited, a month maybe. But I was really glad we did, because by then behaviors started to kind of chill out a little bit, back to at least normal. And that's the other thing I would say, is that when kids are in foster care, there's some healing and there's some attachment and there's some things that happen, but really from what I saw with him, behaviors don't change much until after adoption. And again, things tend to get worse first, and then what I saw was this continual downward slide towards better behaviors, to him being less anxious, more calm, having a sense of permanency. That took a while, but for him to really become okay with everything, it took time. And that did not happen, nor could it really before adoption, because before adoption, they kept throwing out all this stuff at him, like, well, we don't know that you'll stay with Nick forever. They kept saying these things to him that really made him feel like everything was up in the air. And that's so hard for kids. And it makes sense that healing doesn't happen when kids are in that situation. So Robert's actual adoption day was pretty interesting. It was a little crazy. Adoption day is really a mixed emotion day, because there's some celebration that, good things are happening and how great it is that this child is joining our family. And then there's this real sense of loss too. And this finality of, we've worked really hard for reunification and it didn't work. It didn't happen. I get into the courtroom and Robert is like crazy hyper and talking like crazy and just going, I don't know, just nuts. And the judge comes up to the table we're sitting at and starts laughing and having this conversation, this back and forth with Robert. And I'm sitting there like really nervous, like, what's he going to say? What's going to happen? Is he going to do something? And he's just having a good time with her, and she's having a good time with him. And she keeps like kind of stopping for a minute, like, oh, well, we better get back to work. And then she comes back and goes, no. Like, she keeps having that. That happens maybe like 4 times, and we're in there for a long time. And she's loving it. And afterward, I realized this is a child that this woman has been reading about for years. And she's been working diligently with him or for him, has never seen him, never met him. He had never been into court because he was, young enough that that was not encouraged. She finally, like, having read all these terrible reports and all this stuff, and having read about the behaviors and having just read and trying, she really fought for him to be reunified. As much as a judge can, and she really worked for that and really was patient with biological dad and tried really hard with biological mom. And so I think she had invested so much in this that to finally meet the child she had fought for was a huge moment. Like, I didn't feel that way at the moment. Like, at the moment I was really nerve-wracked, like, oh my gosh, what is happening right now? Because they were laughing back and forth, and he was kind of tense, but having it like talking really fast and having a good time, and she was having a good time and talking with him a lot and just enjoying every minute of it. We get out of the courtroom. Adoption happens. She's really happy. You can tell the judge is really happy. Adoption happens. I'm really happy and relieved. All of that finally over. Or before we walk out, the judge says, there's a lady, a clerk will come meet you to sign a few things on the paperwork. Make sure you don't leave without signing that, because if not, he is not adopted, and we'll have to go through some of this process again. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I make sure I'm there, and the lady comes out, the clerk, and she has this paperwork, and it has me down as the single adoptive mother. And I'm like, oh, there's an error. And she goes, well, I'm sorry, if there's an error, we'll have to refile. Like, the adoption won't happen today. It'll be probably a few weeks. And I'm just sitting here going, what? And the judge walks by and goes, oh, good, the paperwork's there. I think she's like on her break or whatever. And I said, yeah, but apparently we can't do this today. And the judge goes, this is happening today. And she looks at it, and the clerk goes, well, I don't know how. And the judge says, someone made a mistake. He is not going to pay. Robert is not going to pay for that mistake. So let's make this right today. And then the clerk says, well, the real issue is that there's no place on the form for a dad, for a single dad. There's the married couple section, and then on the form there's a place for a single mom to adopt. And so he has to be listed as mother or as part of a married couple. And the judge goes, no. You are going to go reprint this form. I'll sign whatever I have to. We're going to get this done. And the clerk kind of mumbles something like, well, this just doesn't ever happen. This is like the first time I've ever seen this happen. And the judge goes, but hopefully there will be a lot more people like Nick who do this. Something along the lines, too, of, this might be one of the first times that I've walked through a single man adopting a child like this, but gosh, I hope there are many more just like you.
On adoption day, after I was adopted, I wanted to go make a bear for some reason. So we went to Bear Workshop, and that was pretty nice. I was exploring around, and I noticed there was this Star Wars thing. I'm like, ooh, I want to make a Star Wars figure. So I ran around the whole shop pretty much. I picked a bear that had a Star Wars on, that literally was blue and black, in yellow, literally saying Star Wars. I picked that out as my, saying, I found a shirt that matched Star Wars, pants even, boots even, and just as if that wasn't enough money to spend, my dad even let me get a accessory, so I got a blaster, and then we got it so it had I think sang too. So it sounds, what was it? I think mine said, may the force be with you. You were the chosen one, a couple others, and then one said, Roger, Roger, so I had a couple sayings on it. So when I first moved in, I hadn't seen movies, and my dad said, if you're gonna stay here, you have to watch Star Wars. And I did, and I don't think he knew how addicted I was gonna become to it, but in our family, I love Star Wars so far. I went so far to even watch fan films about half of the people. Like, I scour Star Wars stuff. I have to know everything about Star Wars.
He's just come so far. So there you go. He handles all sorts of stuff, and he is such a neat guy. Like, honestly, no one would recognize him. No one who knew us back when he first came in and saw him now would think it was the same kid. The things that have made that impact, I think, are just consistency over time. And so consistency, I know we've talked a lot about counseling and support groups and family support and all those things, friends who are really supportive, all those things help us be consistent. Help me be consistent in the way I deal with Robert, giving me breaks, all the things that you need to be able to parent and be creative. I will say one thing they don't tell you when you do foster care and adoption is that you are going to be sleep deprived. You are. And for years I was. And now we have another kid in the house and it's back. Like, I'm not sleeping at night. And I feel like they should do, like, don't they train CIA type people to go without sleep for long periods of time, and Navy SEALs and whatever? They should give that training to foster parents. Why aren't we getting that? Because that's what we need. Like, most of the training they give us, I don't know, is okay, but really, come on, let's be prepared for reality here. Get the Navy SEALs in here to teach us how to survive sleep deprivation over long periods of time. I don't know. I don't want to make it sound like everything is sunshine and roses now, because he's 13, and a lot of the stuff that comes with a typical 13-year-old, we see, like, occasional backtalk and whatnot, but even that is so mild compared to a lot of his behaviors when he was 7 years old, and compared to other teenagers as well. Here we are. Robert's doing awesome. He's doing great. Like, honestly, he's doing so good. Robert's excited about being a big brother. Well, most days. So most days, Robert's excited about foster care and the fact that we're adopting another kid. I think he's really grateful to be the big brother instead of the younger brother, because he was the younger brother for so long as we did foster care. So here we are.
Just have to say, for those people who helped me through, the people who helped my dad through having to deal with me, and the people who dealt with me themselves somewhat to help my dad, thank you. Thank you for everything you've done. You've impacted my life majorly, and I think you impacted my dad's. It was good for him to have that support of other families and grown-ups